Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for OneGroup's informational update series. My name is Allison Dunn, and we have several of our OneGroup experts with us today on our call. We think back and we started this webinar series 4 months ago in response to the coronavirus pandemic. And the whole idea was to keep you informed and to share relevant and timely information. And we've certainly switched gears with our webinars to provide you with any pertinent, timely updates that could affect your business, whether coronavirus related or not. Our goal is really to keep you informed on matters that could impact your business, ranging from business insurance and risk management to human resources and employee benefits matters. And we do have several experts with us today. As I mentioned, we have Todd Hoffman, our Senior Bank Liaison. We have Paul Kader, Vice President of Risk Management. Kelly Goodsell, Vice President of Claims Risk Management. Dennis Ast, Senior Account Executive, Cyber Risk Specialist. We have Casey Cohn, our Senior Managing Consultant for our HR Consulting area. Nate Bradley, Employee Benefits Consultant, and Mike Tisdale, our Vice President with OneGroup Retirement Advisors. And we're going to cover a lot of different topics. We'll be discussing updates to address our clients' frequently asked questions in different areas. So we're going to touch on risk management, claims, cyber, human resources, including retirement, and also the Paycheck Protection Program. We do have to include a disclaimer that this program is for informational and educational use only, and nothing in this discussion should be considered legal advice. Please consult with the appropriate attorney or advisor before addressing any situation raised in this discussion. So for today, we will focus our discussion on key updates, areas that we've been working on with our clients, as well as topics our clients have been asking us about. We also ask that participants share any questions they have in advance, so we'll be addressing those as well. We have muted all callers just due to the number of callers on, but we do encourage your questions. So if there's anything we didn't cover during the call or you need more information, please feel free to reach out to us. Our first topic for today relates to small business relief and updates on the Paycheck Protection Program. Todd Hoffman has been keeping us updated with developments, and he will provide another update today. Todd? And we're doing this virtually, so we may have lost Todd. We may, if Todd is not there, skip on to a new topic, and we'll come back to Todd at the end. We may have lost him from our virtual WebEx we have going here. So we will skip over Todd and come back to him as soon as he's able to join. We do have, we will move on to our area of risk management. So we're going to turn things over to Paul Kader right now, and Paul will take us through some information relating to planning for companies and what they need to do to prepare for ongoing strategies related to this new world that we're in. So Paul, we'll turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Allison. If you could just give me a heads up and let me know if you can hear me. Am I on?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Had me nervous there for a minute.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
so from a risk management standpoint, I wanted to just give a brief update on COVID in general, and then how it's sort of affecting industries and businesses across New York State and across the country. In general, COVID-19 continues to spread across the country. Case rates continue to rise, particularly across the South and in the West. Here in New York State, it's starting to, it's been coming down, and it continues to decrease as we move forward through this time period. We've seen pop-up cases that across the state, and usually those pop-up cases might range anywhere from 5 to 18 to sometimes 30 or 40 positive cases stemming from an event or an environment in which distance is really the key. Distancing and mask usage have not been used. So it might be whether it's an event of some kind in which people gather. So it might be a social event or a political event or a societal event, or the big places we've seen these things happening are in facilities that by nature of the beast, by nature of the business, the distancing rule is violated. That residential facilities, nursing homes, and some manufacturing facilities. So it's still out there. We have to continue to remind our staff and remind ourselves at times that COVID-19 is still out there. It's in the workplace, it's in the society, and it still can have a very decimating effect on your business if it's brought in. So we have to continue asking the questions to our staff on our screening processes and whatnot, of what they've been doing, where they've been going, are they aware of any exposures, are they aware of any positive COVID exposures that they've had, and we have to continue to respond accordingly. Now, from the OSHA standpoint, OSHA continues to be active in responding to hospitalizations and fatalities across the state. They are still looking in the news, in social media, and taking reports from other individuals about such cases, the hospitalizations or potential fatalities, and they are coming back to the employer and asking whether or not they have filed, or if they haven't filed, the reports to OSHA in accordance with the serious injury reporting process, where you have to call OSHA within 24 hours of a hospitalization or 8 hours of a fatality. So if in fact you have those cases where you have a hospitalization, make sure that you're looking at it, determining the work relatedness to it, and addressing that and calling OSHA if applicable. OSHA is also out there enforcing relative to COVID. They've been going into facilities, and if they're doing a general inspection or if they're going in for other reasons, they will ask you about what your COVID prevention program is. And for citations, they can cite you under the general duty clause, which is the necessity to provide a safe place to work, or they can cite you under the bloodborne pathogens program, under the respiratory protection program, et cetera, et cetera. There are no new standards in regard to COVID, so you don't have to worry about those, but they can cite you on all the old ones. Keep in mind that while the insurance carriers, you may get involved with your insurance carrier from a workers' comp standpoint, and they may say to you, we will determine whether it's a work-related injury. That's from an insurance standpoint. If you're looking at your OSHA 300 log and deciding whether or not to put a COVID case onto the log, or deciding whether or not to report a case of hospitalization or fatality, that's up to the employer to decide whether or not it's work-related. And what we've been telling people from the start of this is, if there is a good suspicion that it is work-related, you're better off putting it on the log or reporting it to OSHA, and then determining the final outcome as you move through the investigation process, because of the time frames that are involved there. Now, when it comes to New York State, the governor issued an executive order mandating individuals quarantine after traveling to or from certain states. And you've probably all seen the list. It grew from 7 states at first to 16, and I think now it's up to about 31 or 32 states. The list continues to grow and change every day, but what you have to keep in mind there is that executive order is the law. The requirements of the quarantine order go well beyond just not letting that person come into work. That requires that person to isolate in their home, to get food brought in from the outside, to isolate within their home from other individuals who may not have been exposed, et cetera, et cetera. So it's well beyond just a guideline such as the CDC issues. This is the law. And if an employee comes to your office who has been in one of those situations, visiting one of those states, and should be quarantined, you have to keep in mind that if you allow them in, you're participating in that individual's breaking the law. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with your employees on these cases. Employers are being asked by the health department about situations where an employee has traveled out of the state to one of the listed states. If they flew, they've got their name. If they took the train, a lot of times they have their name. So I've had several clients of ours that call and say, hey, I just got a call from the health department, and they said that my employee went to Wisconsin or Ohio or whatever the case might be, and they wanted to know if I was aware of it and how I'm handling it. So don't be surprised if you get a call like that, and it's just checking up to make sure that the individual has not come into work, that you know about the situation, and that you're handling it appropriately. Now, as we move forward here, what I see happening out in the workplace and in the regulatory agencies as far as the state and OSHA, I see a lot of discussions about pursuing infection control programs for all industries. Right now, healthcare industries and clinical environments are mandated by the health department to have a formal infection control program. They're evaluated and assessed by the health department for that. But I see OSHA moving toward, because of this situation, moving toward mandating an infection control program for just about any industry out there. So it would behoove us to start thinking that way at this time. We've already got a lot of COVID-related procedures in place, so it's not going to be a large stretch to move from what we have now into a more permanent situation relating to infection control. And that will be beneficial to our organizations, whether it's during the COVID time, whether it's due to the general flu season, or heaven forbid when we face that next SARS virus that happens down the road. To help you with that, OSHA and the CDC, particularly the CDC, have developed a tool to develop and assess your current infection control process at your facility. So it'll give you a good leg up to be out there and seeing where you stand today relative to infection control and what you could do to build a more formal and permanent program. That tool is available on the web, but we're also going to post it onto our website. It has quite a name to it. It's called the Interim Customizable Non-Healthcare Workplace Infection Control Assessment and Response Tool for Coronavirus Disease 2019. It's abbreviated WICAR, W-I-C-A-R. And it has the elements of facility and workforce characteristics, facility policies and procedures, infection prevention and control policies and practices, guidelines and other resources, and a direct observation of facility practices tool. So those areas help you lay out a good infection control program, and it's set up as more of an assessment, but it'll guide you to those areas that you'll need to build out to more of a policy and procedures process. The document, like I said, is going to be up on our website sometime this afternoon, or you can grab it off the web. You can just search CDC non-healthcare workplace assessment for infection control, and you'll land on it eventually, but you can grab it right off our website and use it. It's a good tool. It doesn't apply to all industries as is. You'll still have to customize it to yours, but it will give you a good overview of what you need to have in place to help manage this situation and this type of situation going forward. So that's all I have for today. I wish you the best. Stay healthy and stay happy out there, and I'll turn it back to Allison.
Okay, Paul, thank you so much. And I appreciate you sharing all that information. We do have Todd Hoffman. We were going to start with Todd today, but we had a technical issue, but Todd is back. So we're going to turn things over to Todd now to talk about small business relief updates relating to the Paycheck Protection Program. Todd?
Thanks, Allison. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. I guess I wasn't meant to go first on these calls, but anyway, thank you. I've got a brief update with 3 items to touch on. First of all, as far as the next wave of funding goes, there's nothing definitive right now. Congress has indicated they've got additional coronavirus relief package under consideration. It was supposed to be in place right about now, but again, nothing definite yet, but that could change at any time. I have heard the next round is potentially to be more industry specific based on the regulatory impact that COVID had on that particular industry. So if by virtue of regulations that were issued and industry was hurt and could not, come back, or they had, just overwhelming restrictions on them, those industries may be the ones targeted for relief with this next wave. First I want to touch on is searchable information. So in early July, the SBA and the Treasury released detailed and searchable information about more than 650,000 borrowers that received the PPP loans. For loans below 150,000, the borrowers' names were not released, but totals for those borrowers were provided by zip code, industry, and business type. However, for loans over $150,000, the loan amount on a basis of range, their names, addresses, and a whole bunch of other information was provided to the public. So with that information out in the public domain, it makes sense for borrowers to be prepared to answer questions from the press or any other interested parties about whether they met eligibility requirements, why they needed a loan, and how they used the loan proceeds. And I actually know of a situation where the employees found out this information and were asking company management all these questions, especially in situations maybe where the employees were laid off or furloughed. So be cognizant of that and be ready to answer those questions if they come up. Another key point is that the deadline for application to still apply for a PPP loan was extended until August 8th. So contrary to the first wave of funding, which was expended very quickly, there's still a significant amount of funds available to borrow under the PPP program. So if you know of anybody or you are still thinking about it, the money is there and available and you can still make application. Last thing I want to touch on is updates on forgiveness. The SBA and the Treasury continue to clarify the forgiveness process in light of the most recent legislation that was passed. One recent clarification was that a borrower may apply for forgiveness at any time on or before the maturity date of its loan. That includes prior to the end of the applicable covered period. So if the borrower has used all their loan proceeds, if the borrower has used all their loan proceeds for which it was requesting forgiveness. That calculation can be very tricky depending on when you choose to apply for the forgiveness. So again, I recommend you make these determinations working in conjunction with a CPA or other business professionals that you trust and that has a clear understanding of the program. Again, if you don't have somebody that you can work with or you need some advice, we're happy to point you in the right direction. You can reach out to me or anyone else here on the committee. There's a lot of good resources out there, especially from local CPA and law firms. You can go onto their websites and look stuff up. I will just point out one of the many good ones that I've used and is very helpful is the Danable and McKee CPA website. They've got some excellent resource materials there for both COVID and PPP. And that is all I have for today. Thanks, Allison.
Todd, thank you. Appreciate that information. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about commercial insurance and claims. We have Kelly Goodsill with us today, and she will provide an update on what's happening in the world of commercial insurance and claims. Kelly?
Thanks, Allison. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us for our webinar. So before I get started on commercial coverages and claims, I thought I would share with you something hot off of the press here. A new bill was just introduced in the state of New York, and actually it was introduced on July 20th. And keep in mind that this is just a bill. It hasn't been passed yet. But what it is it's an act to amend the general obligations law in relation to declaring agreements exempting employers from liability for negligence related to the COVID-19 pandemic and void in all the unforeseeable that may come as a result of this. So I know a lot of employers and businesses have concerns, and rightfully so. As an employer, what my potential liability is if I let people into my business with respect to hiring. So if anybody's interested in reading this proposed bill, which will ultimately change the general obligations law, and actually it's adding a section to it, feel free to reach out to us, and actually we will post a proposed legislation on our website too, if you'd like to look at it there, which I think is a direction that I feel that employers will feel more comfortable with if in fact this passes in New York State. So moving on to commercial lines insurances and claims. As many of you know, there's ongoing questions in how business interruption and civil authority responds to COVID-19. Most policies have specific exclusions for viruses and bacteria. A lot of legislation, or I'm sorry, a lot of litigation still pending, still going on relative as to whether or not the virus is a covered cause of loss, et cetera. So we continue to monitor that with respect to if there's going to be any changes in current contractual language in the commercial lines insurance policies. As mentioned before, a lot of the policies, if they don't already have an exclusion that would apply to a virus, we're seeing a lot of our carriers are putting them on renewal policies going forward. There are also some carriers out there that are putting together what we'll just refer to as a pandemic insurance product. There's been a few things out there that I've seen. Nothing that I think that would be very attractive from probably a cost perspective at this point. But I know that businesses and insurance companies are eager to provide that coverage for those who would like to review that in the future. Relative to claims and workers' compensation, I think from what we're seeing from our agency is it's slowing down with respect to actual claims being submitted. But as you know, as we all start to reopen, the risk of seeing an uptick in that area is something that's certainly real, and we will have to continue to watch. So relative to kind of the new that we talked about that would change the general obligations law, prior to this, a lot of our partners were asking about liability waivers. And our recommendation on liability waivers is that they don't stop the lawsuit or the claim being made, but they are a good way to make your customers aware of what you're doing as a business to protect them and protect yourselves in the COVID-19 area. So really, that's really about all I've got, Allison, but I did think that the new proposed bill to amend the general obligations law was very interesting, and we'll see how that plays out.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Very timely information. And now we're going to move to HR updates. We have Casey Cohn with us today. She'll be providing some updates that are human resources related. So we'll turn it over to Casey.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about, as Allison mentioned, some updates with regards to some human resources areas. Paul mentioned earlier on our call today, he mentioned the travel restrictions in New York, and I wanted to touch on that. So similar to what Paul said, as of right now, there's about 31 states that are considered restricted states. And so, if someone voluntarily chooses to travel to those states, they do have to follow the mandatory quarantine. There are certain exceptions to the travel advisory for essential workers, and the New York State Department of Health has quite a bit of information on, what those exceptions are and the specific criteria with regards to that. The governor did clarify to say that employees who travel voluntarily to any of those restricted areas and then come back and have to quarantine would not be eligible for the New York COVID-19 paid sick leave. And so with that, employers should make employees aware of that restriction so that they know should they travel and come back that benefit would not be available to them. With that being said, those employers with less than 500 employees and certain public sector employers that are covered under the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that could apply in certain situations, again, depending on the circumstance. So just some things to be aware of and goes along the lines of, communicating out to employees of what are the expectations and restrictions and requirements for them. Speaking of the FFCRA, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I think it's important for employers to remember that paid sick leave component of the FFCRA is up to 80 hours capped for a full-time employee, and that's total. So if someone were to utilize the FFCRA for their own qualifying event and use their 80 hours of paid sick leave, they then are not able to use it again in a different circumstance. So it is capped at that 80 hours of paid sick leave under the FFCRA. Along the lines with the FFCRA, talking about the expanded FMLA part that allows eligible employees to have paid leave to care for someone, their child, whose school or place of care is closed due to COVID. There was some information that a summer camp or some other, summer type of program that someone would have been enrolled in or was enrolled in, if that became unavailable due to COVID, that someone could use the FFCRA portion for that. The Department of Labor did release a field assistance bulletin to help clarify what that means and how to sort through that, because the intent was, when the regulation was rolled out, it used the word enrolled. So someone would have to be enrolled in a program or school, and when this was rolled out, many children were enrolled in their school program. You have the summer school programs or summer camp programs that might not have been, where they would not have been enrolled in. And what this clarification discusses is, was there an intent to enroll? Was there an application filled out? Was there a deposit made? How do you navigate through if someone could be eligible for the FFCRA benefit and that situation? So that was released by the Department of Labor in late June, and we'll have that on our website as well. Speaking of the Department of Labor, the DOL did release new revised FMLA forms for employers to use if they choose to use the Department of Labor's version of the Family Medical Leave Act forms. They are available on their website, and they were released in June. Some things to note with regards to the new forms, the Department of Labor indicated that it's their belief that the forms are more simple to use. There's a lot more checkboxes, and it allows for electronic signature to avoid, contact. So those forms are updated and on the website. An employer can still choose to use the old forms that were previously available. That's the employer's choice. And then certainly I wanted to note that there's not any FFCRA components on these revised forms. The revised forms are specific to the FMLA and FMLA requirements, and the FFCRA has separate and unique documentation requirements. So the revised forms are for FMLA purposes only. Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about unemployment, as we are receiving a lot of questions with regards to unemployment, and understandably so, as there certainly has been quite an increase in claims. Generally speaking, someone still does need to be ready, willing, and able to work in order to qualify for unemployment. What we're seeing is there is, no surprise, but quite a bit of backlog with protests. So if an employer, receives notice that someone has applied for unemployment and they don't believe that they meet the criteria, whether they are on, for whatever reason, whether on leave of absence or currently working, or whatever the circumstance might be, and that employer issues a protest, there is quite a backlog that's, our understanding is months and months, is what we were recently told from the Department of Labor. So the Department of Labor is still accepting the protest, but should you be in a situation where you are filing that due to a worker, please know that it could take months before it's actually reviewed and the decision is made. And as always, the state makes the ultimate decision on unemployment claims, and they are made on a case-by-case basis. So, should you find yourself in a situation you feel that someone's not eligible, you can make that protest. But again, the state makes the ultimate determination in those cases. And with that, I will turn it back to Allison. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Casey. We're going to have Nate Bradley give us an update now on employee benefits matters. Nate works with our consultants and clients, really looking at compliance and making sure that any changes are communicated. And so while a lot of the changes he'll talk about have previously been communicated, a lot of them are good reminders just to make you aware of what's taking place in the world of employee benefits. So Nate, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks everyone for joining today. What we're going to talk about is a little bit of COVID related, but also just kind of some general health insurance related topics to keep on the radar. The first thing I did want to mention was a reminder on testing. So COVID-19 testing and also including antibody testing is covered in full when it's ordered by a physician, and then they're provided by an FDA approved lab. There's been a lot of groups that had been hoping to either do ongoing testing of their employees or test before allowing them to come back to work. However, if those tests are not provided by a physician, if they're simply to ensure that someone is not positive at the time that they would come back to work and there is really no symptoms, then those tests are going to be either paid for by the participant themselves or by the employer. So it is only covered in full when it's ordered by a physician. So this has kind of changed the stance of some of those employers that were going to either do ongoing testing or test everyone before bringing them back. So from a physician, covered in full, but if you just want to have your employees tested, that would be at the cost of the group or the individual themselves. Special enrollment periods, this is just a reminder that a lot of carriers are still allowing special enrollments due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you have someone that is not on, but they want to come onto the plan and they don't have any other qualifying event, this is a reason to get on the plan. And the New York State of Health Insurance and Exchange has also extended their special enrollment window through August 15th. So if someone that does not currently have coverage is looking for coverage through the exchange, they would be able to get on a plan for September 1st if their enrollment was complete by August 15th. And a couple more things, wellness reminders. So a lot of groups have been making their decisions on what they're going to do with their wellness programs. Some groups have very robust programs where they do on-site testing and require participants to get a certain amount of points or meet certain criteria before they can have whatever wellness incentive a group may offer. Most groups are continuing their program in some format. I really haven't seen any groups that I work with just scrap their programs altogether. Some are still doing on-site testing. The carriers that do that, the phlebotomists, they're properly suited with PPE and meeting in different spots of the facility than they may have previously done that. And then a lot of groups are moving to either a test at a lab, so think of a Quest or a LabCorp type facility, or even testing at their own physician as options to keep the programs going in some form or another. This is probably, if you haven't already, the time to start planning, what you're going to do for your fall screenings, if that's the time frame you usually do it. But wellness has not been, scrapped during all this. It might be more important than it ever has been during all this. So keep that in mind. And then the thing I'll close with here is, of course, the legislative updates, of which I think I've talked about the HEROES Act on probably the last 3 of these calls because it passed the House more than 2 months ago, but never even had a chance to get through the Senate. It has never been voted on. The Senate is now working with the White House on their package. The House's package was $3 trillion. The Senate's is currently at $1 trillion. So I'd say there's probably a lot of things different in there that will have to be fought through before anything eventually is passed. A couple of the items that are being proposed by both sides right now are related to the safety of vaccines, bias and anti-racism training in health insurance providers and individuals when it comes to testing, treatment, vaccines, etc. Extended paid leave for healthcare workers, and new job training programs to combat COVID and help communities across the country safely reopen. So there's a lot of things that are kind of on the table, probably 99% of which will never go anywhere, but we keep an eye on all that stuff so that you folks don't have to. And when there is finally something agreed to and passed, we will have an alert out to everyone shortly after that, and likely follow with some other type of webinar so everyone knows how it impacts your business and your participants. So with that, Allison, that's the employee benefits perspective for the July 23rd call.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Thanks for all the information, all the reminders, and all the new information. Thank you. Actually, we have 2 other individuals who will be going over information. We have Mike Tisdale, who's going to provide some IRS and other updates. Mike?
Thanks, Allison. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. Just a quick update on our end. The IRS issued 2 new coronavirus-related guidance points for us back in late June. So the first one is the IRS Notice 2020-51, which is the guidance on RMD waivers, so required minimum distributions. So it provides the guidance that permitting rollovers of the waived RMDs, and it extends the 60-day rollover period to August 31st, 2020. So what that means is part of the CARES Act, which we've chatted about on this call, where folks could waive taking their RMD in the year 2020. What this is essentially saying is anybody that perhaps took their RMD in, let's say, January, February, March, prior to, COVID spreading and prior to the CARES Act being released, this is now permitting those folks to essentially roll that RMD back into either their 401k, their 403b, or their IRA. So essentially, if they didn't need that income, they're not forced to take it out of their plan. So, we have some business owners that, on a routine basis take their RMD in January, and now they're able to put that RMD back into the plan and let that continue to, grow tax deferred for at least for 2020. And they have until August 31st of this year to do so. The second guidance that was released is relating to safe harbor relief. So this provides flexibility for mid-year reductions or suspensions of safe harbor contributions. So if your company has been affected, negatively by COVID from a cash flow standpoint, and you're considering, reducing or suspending your safe harbor contribution, this is something where you would want to, chat with your advisor, chat with your third-party administrator, and see if it's feasible for your plan. And this allows safe harbor plans to adopt the amendments between March 13th, 2020, and then through, again, August 31st, 2020. So again, you have about a month or so to, chat with, your third-party administrator. On the flip side, if you're on the call and your company is having a better than usual year, with the Secure Act that was passed back in December of 2019, which I'm sure to all of us feels like a decade ago, the Secure Act for the first time lets plans, add a safe harbor provision mid-year. So again, if you're having a better than normal year or a good year and you want to add that feature for your employees, you can do that mid-year as well. So again, that's something you would chat with your advisor or your third-party administrator about. That's it on the 2 focal points that the IRS had released. Just a couple other things to keep in mind. I know we've kind of passed our information on our monthly calls that OneGroup Retirement Advisors has been hosting, which have been, very well attended, both from a plan sponsor standpoint and plan participants. But on Thursday, August 6th, we have a call with JP Morgan to discuss cyber safety, so protecting your information online. This is certainly a useful call for your employees, for your plan participants. Thursday, September 17th, Hartford will present what's called their MIT Labs 8,000 Days Retirement Planning. As we all know, with today's rising lifespan, we could be facing, 20 or more years in retirement, which is, approximately 8,000 days. So, it's a way to just make sure that, we're planning for the future. And, as we've seen with the pandemic, and unfortunately, we've seen that a lot of Americans are not prepared for retirement. So this should be a really well-attended call. That one's on Thursday, September 17th. And then on Thursday, October 15th, we have JP Morgan coming back, and they're going to give us a market outlook following the close of the third quarter and leading into the final run-up to the 2020 election. If you think any of these calls would be beneficial for you or your employees, just again, feel free to shoot us a note to support at onegroup.ra.com, and we can send you out the WebEx info once it comes into us. Lastly, an additional way For us to stay in front of our plan participants, we've recently rolled out and created a YouTube channel, which is open to the public. We are committed to uploading at least one video a week, which is, the intention is to provide timely updates and general education material. The link is on our site, so onegroup.ra.com. Encourage you to check it out. There's going to be some good information there, again, for both you as a plan sponsor and your employees, the plan participants. On that, I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you.
Great, Mike. Thank you so much for all of the information. Our last speaker today is Dennis Ast, and Dennis is going to provide us with an update and some reminders relating to cyber. Dennis?
Thanks, Allison. Yeah, sadly, we continue to see a lot of cyber events, both in general as well as targeted coronavirus-related attacks. In fact, there's a 3,900% increase February through June on targeted attacks. Specifically in May and June, the increase has been over 34% over the previous 2 months. What does that mean numbers-wise? That's going from about 5,000 attacks per week to over 200,000 attacks per week. So significant increase. Most of these are COVID related. We have seen some COVID related items recently in the news where there have been attacks on healthcare facilities, specifically looking to steal and obtain information on treatment and research that came out recently, that both the Soviets and China were doing that through some targeted cyber events. We've also seen a recent cyber event on Twitter, right, where it was, they were hacked on some very prominent people in a result to get some Bitcoin, which they successfully did, I believe, over $100,000. So, we continue to see these events on the non-cyber related. What we're seeing is a lot of infiltration from a ransomware standpoint, and what's being referred to now is kind of a double extortion. So they're providing a ransom request, and if you don't pay the ransom, they are then exporting your data onto a public website for everybody to see. Again, these cyber criminals are opportunistic and they want to make money, so they're going to look for any way possible to make money either for themselves or the organization that they work for. So again, continue to be vigilant and careful. So just there are a couple of really good cyber hygiene that you should be following. So employee training is number one. Think before you click, don't panic. So many of these cyber events occur because the individual that opens up that email or clicks on that link is concerned or panicked. So just, take your time, calm down, think through it. If it doesn't seem right, don't do it. With the increased utilization of remote workers, you should definitely be utilizing multi-factor authentication as well as a VPN. It won't completely prevent everything, but it'll prevent most of the normal cyber events. You should be using strong passwords and, better yet, passphrases. Make it difficult for someone to get into your system. Don't use public Wi-Fi. I know there's a lot of information out there from people and that there is, secure public Wi-Fi. There's just way too many opportunities for a cyber criminal to access your system just by using public Wi-Fi. And along those same lines, secure your mobile devices. There's lots of software and applications out there to help you secure your mobile devices. Certainly look into that and ensure that they're secure. You should be installing and updating your anti-malware. These cyber criminals continue to get smarter, so you should be looking at next gen as well as artificial intelligence in your anti-malware to continue to be able to block as many things as possible. Stay current with your patching and updates. Most times you get a push on your cell phone or on your mobile device or even on your laptop for an update. It's because a security breach has been identified and they have a patch to kind of help prevent access. So please keep up with your patches and your updates. Know what you have. If you can do a risk assessment, NIST, NIST has a great publicly available framework. It's a great starting point if you've never done an assessment of what you actually have on your system. And then, of course, you have to have a backup. You need to test it. And then if you can, preferably you need to air gap it. Keep it disconnected from the internet and any Wi-Fi so that if, God forbid your system does get infiltrated, that you do have a clean copy and a clean backup. And then of course, good vendor management, right? Most cloud providers and other IT service providers, the contracts are going to favor them, but you want to kind of turn that around and make sure that they're beneficial contracts to you. So make sure they have indemnification and hold harmless agreements. And if the data breach is caused by them, that they have insurance in place to cover you. And then the biggest thing I can say is have a cyber response plan. Whether you have insurance or not, it doesn't really make a difference. You need to have a plan in place. If unfortunately you have a cyber event, what are you going to do first? What's that first phone call going to be? Many policies come with what's called a cyber breach coach that you have access to. Great start right there, but know what you're going to do. It'll help eliminate some of the costs and be able to get you back up and running quickly. So it's a really brief update and some good cyber hygiene. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for that information. That is all the information we had today that we wanted to cover. We would like to thank all of you for participating in our update series. We do plan on having additional update series just to keep you informed and let you know what's going on. If you do have any topics you'd like us to cover for our future webinars, please let us know. We're happy to incorporate that into our material. And we will continue posting information to our website, which is www.onegroup.com. We will post the materials referenced today in our discussion. And we certainly, as always, encourage you to reach out to your OneGroup contact with any additional questions, clarification needed, what have you. We are here, we continue to be here, and we certainly look forward to helping you and our communities in the future. Thank you and have a great day.